it does not mean that it has to be the only issue we talk about. Economics, health, scientific exchanges. International cooperation on issues of regional as well as global import are also important. But this is something that we are going to stay on. And I actually welcome President Castro commenting on some of the areas where he feels that we're falling short, because I think we should not be immune or afraid of criticism or discussion, as well. Here's the one thing I do know is that when I talk to Cuban Americans and, Jim, you're second generation, and so I think I speak not for you directly. But for many that I talk to around the United States, I think there is enormous hope that there can be reconciliation. And the bridge that President Castro discussed can be built between the Cuban American community and Cubans here. There are family ties and cultural ties that are so strong. And I think everyone would benefit from those ties being re-established. One of the impediments to strengthening those ties is these disagreements around human rights and democracy. And to the extent that we can have a good conversation about that and to actually make progress. That, I think, will allow us to see the full flowering of a relationship that is possible. In the absence of that, I think it will continue to be a very powerful irritant. And this is not unique to U.S. Cuban relations. It's one that as you know, I have conversations with when we go to bilateral meetings with some of our very close allies. As well as countries that we don't have as close of a relationship to. but I think it is something that matters. And I've met with people who have been subject to arbitrary detention. And that's something that I generally have to speak out on because I hear from them directly and I know what it means for them. Excuse me. President Raúl Castro, as interpreted. I was asking if his question was directed to me or to President Obama. You talked about political prisoners. President Obama, I think the second one was addressed to you. Trump and Hillary. President Raúl Castro, as interpreted. For him or for me? Question, as interpreted. For you, Mr. President. President Raúl Castro, what did you say about the political prisoners? Can you repeat that question about political prisoners? Did you ask if we had political prisoners? Question, I wanted to know if you have Cuban political prisoners and why you don't release them. President Raúl Castro, give me the list of political prisoners and I will release them immediately. Just mention a list. What political prisoners? Give me a name or names. After this meeting is over. You can give me a list of political prisoners. And if we have those political prisoners, they will be released before tonight ends. Question, and Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, President Castro? President Raúl Castro, as interpreted. Well, I cannot vote in the United States. Question, as interpreted. My question is for President Raúl Castro. I'm from Cuban TV. President Raúl Castro. You have repeatedly stated, and today once again, that we must learn to coexist in a civilized manner with our differences. Could you broaden this concept? This is a historical moment that we are living. And then I have a brief question for President Obama. President Obama, could US government give more space to eliminate US blockade during your mandate so that another generation of Cubans would not have to suffer this economic and commercial blockade against Cuba? President Raúl Castro, as interpreted. The first question was for me. Please repeat your question, because I couldn't hear well. Question, as interpreted. You have said repeatedly that we must learn to coexist in a civilized manner with our differences. President Raúl Castro, well, President Obama himself has referred to that. We have given the first steps, many for being the first steps. And we must continue giving these steps. And I'm sure that we will be able to coexist peacefully in an environment of mutual cooperation as we are doing already in many fields for the benefit of both countries and with the benefit of other countries, as we have already done in Haiti, with the cholera, and in Africa with the Ebola. That is the future of mankind if we want to save the human species. the level of water grows and the island may become smaller. You are asking too many questions to me. I think questions should be directed to President Obama. President Obama, so we have administratively already made a number of modifications on the embargo. I referred to a number of them in my opening statement. And we've actually been fairly aggressive in exercising as much flexibility as we can. Given that the law putting the embargo in place has not been repealed by Congress. There may be some technical aspects of the embargo that we can still make adjustments on. Depending on problems as they arise. So, for example, the issue around the dollar and the need to make modifications in terms of how the embargo was implemented to encourage, rather than discourage reforms that the Cuban government itself is willing to engage in and to facilitate greater trade and commerce. That is something that grew out of the dialogue between our governments, and we have made appropriate adjustments to it. It will take some time for commercial banks to understand the new rules. But we actually think that this is an area where we can improve current circumstances. But I'll be honest with you that the list of things that we can do administratively is growing shorter. And the bulk of changes that have to be made with respect to the embargo are now going to rely on Congress making changes. I've been very clear about the interests in getting that done before I leave. Frankly. Congress is not as productive as I would like during a presidential election year. But the fact that we have such a large congressional delegation with Democrats and Republicans with us is an indication that there is growing interest inside of Congress for lifting the embargo. As I just indicated in my earlier answer, how quickly that happens will, in part, depend on whether we can bridge some of our differences around human rights issues. And that's why the dialogue, I think, is so important. It sends a signal that at least there's engagement between the two countries on these matters. Now, I promised the President I would take one more question. Andrea Mitchell of NBC. Question, thank you, Mr. President. Do you feel, after your meeting today, that you have made enough progress to even accelerate the pace, and that the Cuban government is able to move quickly enough so that the changes that you have made through these technical adjustments to the embargo will be permanent, cannot be reversed by the next president? And what advice have you given to President Castro about the ability of having the blockade, the embargo lifted? Because he has said again today this is a continuous issue which is blocking progress, from their standpoint. And you said the conversations about human rights were frank and candid and that you want to move forward. But even as you were arriving, there were dramatic arrests of peaceful protests, the ladies in white. What signal does that send? Can you have civilized coexistence at the same time you have such profound disagreements about the very definitions of what human rights means, as President Castro expressed today? And for President Castro, for many of us, it's remarkable to hear you speak about all these subjects. Can you tell us what you see in the future? President Obama has 9 months remaining. You have said you would be stepping down in 2018. What is the future of our two countries? Given the different definitions and the different interpretations of profound issues like democracy and human rights? Thank you. President Obama, well, Andrea, the embargo is going to end. When, I can't be entirely sure, but I believe it will end. And the path that we're on will continue beyond my administration. The reason is logic. The reason is that what we did for 50 years did not serve our interests or the interests of the Cuban people. And as I said when we made the announcement about normalization of relations, if you keep on doing something over and over again for 50 years and it doesn't work, it might make sense to try something new. And that's what we've done. And the fact that there has been strong support not just inside of Congress, not just among the American people. But also among the Cuban people indicates that this is a process that should and will continue. Having said that, lifting the embargo requires the votes of a majority in Congress. And maybe even more than a majority in the Senate. And as I indicated to President Castro, two things I think will help accelerate the pace of bringing the embargo to an end. The first is to the degree that we can take advantage of the existing changes that we've already made and we see progress, that will help to validate this change in policy.